Hello, friends. Welcome back to Trending. Today is Thursday, October 24th, about 9:45 as we're recording. Joey made it to another Thursday.
Yes.
Good to see you, my friend. How are you today?
I'm great. This is a real Thursday. Unlike last week where we filmed, Monday?
Yes. It's not a time warp episode.
Pretending like it was Thursday?
Yes. This is real. It's really Thursday.
Timestamp it.
Yes. All right, man. Well, there's a lot happening in the world. We shouldn't talk about sports again.
We need to probably put that on the shelf.
We need to
the
not
back
talk
burner.
about sports.
Turn down the volume.
We've
Like
done
the
enough
tempo.
sports stories.
Yeah.
There's a few things we could talk about, but we're not going to.
Yeah, like LeBron James and Bronny Jr.
Yes. That's what I was going to ask you if you had an opinion on. I don't know.
Yes. I mean, I was certainly like watching it and then listening to some commentary. It's clear that Bronny Jr. needs to probably play a little more college ball. Mm-hmm. He should not have been the 55th pick.
Yeah.
But it was cool. People are saying this is nepotism writ large, and it really is. Let's just be honest, but I'm here for it.
Yes, he does seem like he's not ready, but it is cool.
Yeah.
I think everyone has that opinion. Like, he should not be here, but oh, look at that. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, look at that.
Kind of like the Griffies or the,
Yeah.
it's kind of coming back to those days. Yes. So that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have kind of a unique topic again today where it's not really a trending topic, but it's something that some people in our audience might be aware of and following. So there's a author, thought leader, podcaster that you and I both like, and that's kind of, I think a lot of our audience might share. Malcolm Gladwell.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show. Good old Malcolm. Which, okay, quick aside.
Yes.
There's no way he's watching this. But there's maybe a slight sliver of a chance. Because last season on his podcast, Revisionist History, he interviewed someone from MCC.
Okay.
Mennonite Central Community.
Yeah.
Mennonite Central Community. And he's got Mennonite roots. He was born and raised in Canada, and some of his family are Mennonite.
Yeah.
So, in the off chance that this somehow gets to Malcolm Gladwell, we welcome you with open arms.
And if you ever just want to pay us a visit, we will move the calendar. We will make it happen. We'll fly to you.
Yes.
If you'd like. Yes.
So we have a specific topic that's related. So Gladwell has a new book out, and it's kind of making the rounds. So I think you have a good topic that we could talk about. But I guess if people don't know who Gladwell is, can you clue people in on who he is and why you like him, why he kind of seems to be a popular figure right now?
He's kind of like a public intellectual, I would say. Mm-hmm. He's good enough to where he's like in popular press. I would put him in the same realm as Adam Grant and a Simon Sinek.
Yep.
Where they have more of a speciality for organizations. Gladwell is just, I think he's a persnickety person. If that's a spiritual gift, I think he's got it in spades. Where he just takes something and he looks at it again. Hence the premise of his podcast, Revisionist History.
Yeah.
And I used to listen to it more faithfully. There's just way too much to listen to now. But I remember I was on a jog one day, and he did kind of a deep dive on a story where a civilian was shot by a police officer, and he completely buried the lead, like just, feet and feet below the surface of the ground. And I remember when he got to the punchline at the end, I stopped running, and to the point where I had to ask myself, "What are you doing? Like, you're supposed to be jogging right now." But I was so caught up because he's also a great storyteller.
Yeah.
But I think his gift is that he is able to kind of do the deep research in the data. But he's also a people person enough, I think, if he would claim that, so he can kind of get his finger on the pulse of what's going on. He knows the zeitgeist.
Market. It's our code word.
Because every book that he's written is critically acclaimed. It's got a wide readership. Even his audiobooks now, he was the first one, I think it is like How to Know Strangers or How to Talk to Strangers.
Talking to strangers.
Talking to strangers. He learned how to take the audiobook instead of just one narrator, going on and on and on and on, reading through a script or a manuscript. He actually made it a podcast episode.
Yeah.
Which I think was kind of cool and clever.
When you interview someone, you actually hear the other person and not just someone reading a quote. And there's sound effects and music, and very well produced.
And he, cut his teeth on the Washington Post, writing op-eds.
Yep.
So he kind of knew how to do research, how to find sources, how to work those sources. But then he branched off on his own. And I think the book that really, there was other books that got him to where in his popularity. But one, I think that his arrival was The Tipping Point.
Yep.
Which the book that he's just released is he's re-examining, he's looking again at the idea of the tipping point.
Yeah.
And part of it is to, I think, double down on some of his conclusions, But a big piece of the book is him rethinking some of his previous conclusions. And I think that's why it's kind of a newsworthy story.
Yeah.
Because isn't it rare for people to say, I thought one way before, but I'm rethinking it in light of X, Y, and Z. In a world where people are doubling down, even on the most outlandish of things, because there is like a shame of being told you're wrong, or that you missed the mark, or that you're inaccurate. And people don't want to ever have that said about them. Right. And so they'll just kind of dig in and double down. Here you have someone who has made it. He doesn't have to retract anything. He's got a great following.
Yeah.
And people will buy the book that he's writing and releasing. He actually takes the time to say, no, I want to re-examine some things and take a second stab at it, which I think is becoming his brand now, to re-examine something that is previously maybe held as gospel before.
Yeah.
So
I to be like open, I haven't read Tipping Point or The Revenge of the Tipping Point, so I haven't read either of these books.
Okay.
But one thing I've heard several interviews with him, both recently and over the years, and what he's a master at is taking like a kind of conventionally held idea and then presenting the opposite viewpoint in a compelling way. Like that's kind of, most of his podcasts are like, here's kind of the story you've heard, but here's the part of the story you haven't heard before.
Yes.
And so what I appreciate is he's basically like, that's kind of like, that's his brand. That's what he's known for. He's doing that to himself, right?
Yeah.
He's like, here's my main idea. If you've heard of me, this is the book you've probably read. This is what made me famous.
Yeah.
But here, let me show you what the other side of this. There's another side of the coin, and it also has value worth exploring. So he's doing to himself what he does to everybody else, which that alone I appreciate. So I guess, do you know enough about the books to kind of, what is kind of The Revenge of the Tipping Point? What is the opposite side that he's kind of using up?
Well, the tipping point is he tried to examine why an idea or a trend catches on. So he uses like the hush puppies and the way crime spreads in a certain area of the world and stuff. And he says that like a movement starts or a big idea penetrates when it has three types of people in play. The mavens, who are kind of the know-it-all, the connectors who know everybody, and then salespeople who can bring new people into the fold. So if you've got those three components, those three types of personalities in your organization, anything you're trying to grow, that's how it happens. And so he took a look at like even Paul Revere, and like, why did Paul Revere's message spread while another, because like two people left with the news, and one side was ready because that was the Paul Revere network.
Yeah.
And then the other, I forget the other person, I'm sorry, it's kind of fallen in my, remember box here on a Thursday morning. And so I think, so in some of the reporting that I've heard, the opioid crisis in his mind is so significant, and it doesn't seem to fit the pattern that he put out as why like something like a disease would spread, that he wanted to look at again. I mean, he notes how it's killing 100,000 Americans a year. So it's significant. So I think it's from a place of benevolence and not just, man, I got to sell another bestseller. But it's he felt, I think, personally responsible for a theory of why these things spread. And if it doesn't fit it, he wants to maybe look at it again. And this is, so on Relevant Magazine, I've got the article up here. This is one of the things I thought was cool. Because he is a unique voice for a certain reason. This is what he said. So he was asked the question, what are you hoping people take away from this book when they read it and when they walk away from it? Which is an interesting question. He says, well, one of the things I've always wanted to do with my books is to provide people with a way of making sense of their experiences. Okay. I always say people are experience rich and theory poor. The reason books such as mine are intended to be a kind of guide is so people can take the things that have happened to them and come up with this can be a helping hand in allowing people to understand what's going on, to give it some meaning. And I've loved that because I think sometimes when a big overwhelming thing comes into our experience, we say, well, it is what it is. I've never been content with that saying. Yeah. I'm like, no, there's something more to it. And so what I think attracts me to Gladwell's work and others is they try to find a pattern. They try to find some sort of a way to explain logically why these big social phenomena happen. And so I think why he's a gift is that he wants to provide another theory in light of new experiences of people in the world. So I think it's a wonderful task that he's taken upon himself.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, Gladwell's great. I think our audience, if they're not familiar with him, I think if you like what we're doing, I think you'd like Gladwell. He's an expert at the kinds of things that we try to do.
Yeah.
So I guess if we were to try to pull kind of take Gladwell out of it for a minute, what's another kind of bigger picture lesson? Do you have what's the Bible parallel? Do you have a character or a story in mind that's kind of a good example of this?
Right. I think this might be one of the golden threads of Scripture, which is that we must keep on learning. We must even doubt our conclusions and doubt our doubts. Like I think this is something that was conveyed to me sometime along the way. But a Christian's native language is apology or confessing that we don't have it all. Like we were once blind, but now we can see.
Yeah.
I think one of the cringy may not be the best word, but one of the most inaccurate portrayals of a Christian is the know-it-all. Is the person who's got, okay, I finally got all the big truths of life nailed down, so don't touch my truths, like the Ned Flanders of the world, someone who's so put together and they can't be challenged. This is simply not the case.
Yeah.
Christians again and again have to continue to think and continue to rely upon the mercy of God. In fact, the lectionary text this week in the Revised Common Lectionary, the gospel reading, is Bartimaeus. And his cry is the cry of the Christian, which is the Kyrie eleison, which is, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. That's his plea. And in modern worship today, one of the things that's a commonplace in liturgical communities is that everyone cries out to God, Lord have mercy on me.
Yeah.
This is the brand new Christian. And this is the most seasoned, elder of all elders in the community. We all say together, and our voices mixed together, and our uniqueness is drowned out in this common confession that we need God's mercy today.
Yeah.
And so I think what's so heartwarming, kind of the base note of this story, is someone who's accomplished is still saying, I think I may have missed it.
Yeah.
And I've got to think again. Which is, I think, a bedrock of Christian experience is the idea of repentance, which is to change our minds in light of new information, in light of new experience. We just are aware that we don't see things as they are, as the Talmud says, but we see things as we are.
Yeah.
Everything's got our fingerprints on it, and therefore it is subject to renegotiation in light of new revelation and new knowledge.
Yeah.
And so that's just something I think that we should practice along with Malcolm Gladwell in our faith journeys, in our parenting, in whatever, like any facet of life. We come with a little more curiosity than all this rugged confidence that we've got it all figured out. So
yeah, that's really good. Yeah. I like the idea of if you are a follower of Jesus, you kind of by definition you had a view of the world and then you changed it. Right?
Yes.
Like Jesus changed how you view everything. Right.
Yes.
And so the Bible's full of examples of people who are living a certain way. They encounter Jesus and they completely turn their life around and live the different. Like Paul, all the disciples, basically anyone in the New Testament. That's kind of the trajectory of the New Testament, as they were living this way.
Yes.
They encountered Jesus and they reevaluated everything. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard this too. I think Lee Strobel was the first one who kind of made this popular, the Case for Christ and the Case for Faith and all those books. And he said one reason why he believes the Bible is that the people who penned it look bad.
Yeah.
Everyone who wrote a letter in the New Testament looks like a fool at some point. And so he says, if you're in that time of the world, you wouldn't want something published that makes you look bad.
Yes.
And all the disciples look like idiots.
Yes.
Regularly.
Yes.
All the heroes of our faith routinely put their foot in their mouth and completely shifted how they viewed the world over and over and over again. So we have a lot of examples of people who are very close to Jesus, who had a misunderstanding, reevaluated, and then turned their life around. So we're not alone in this pursuit. There's a lot of people who have gone before us.
You're right. Such a great point. And particularly in the Roman Empire, which was the first selfie culture, self-aggrandizement was, the company product there. You want to do anything possible to get a statue in your image in the capital city, whether through war efforts or through philosophy and rhetoric or being a good politician. And you would even bail on your family and throw them under the bus in order to get there, right?
Yeah.
And here are these little Christs, dotting the map of the Roman world going, actually, I was once lost, but now I'm found.
Yeah.
And let me tell you my story.
Yeah.
I was, Peter's case, I was the primary disciple. And then again, I messed up all the time. I think there's even the part where, in the transfiguration story, where I think it's Luke's gospel. I could be wrong. I'll double check it. But even the gospel writers, like, Peter did not know what he was talking about.
Yeah, right.
And the laugh track ensues.
Yes, right.
But no, I think this is hard for us, particularly the older that we get. We think that we've accumulated enough experience and education that surely we can move on.
Yeah.
But as Eugene Peterson, I believe, said, like, there is no master Christian. Like, we are all white belts.
Yeah.
We never really graduate.
Yeah.
Sure, there's language in the book of Hebrews, like you can graduate on to the deeper things. Sure, like there's like a familiarity.
Yeah.
But there's never like, I've mastered it, therefore I can move on to the next thing. It's like,
Yeah.
no, we're still at square one. And that's a good thing because we remain disciples and we remain those who are in God's debt, and that we can rely upon his mercy fresh and new every single morning.
I think that's one of the hardest, but maybe the best parts about following Jesus is you have to hold really steady to some things. Like if you're going to follow Jesus, there's these things that you have to hold on to really, really tightly. But then there's so much that I think we'll continue to wrestle with as long as we're alive, as long as humans exist.
Yeah.
There's a big chunk of stuff that we're not going to figure out. And I know for me as a parent, as my daughter Heidi's starting to read the Bible, she's kind of forcing me to reanalyze some of the stories in the Bible. Like, what does this mean? And what were these people doing? And I think it's wise for all of us to hold on to the things that are the most important, but then everything else, like, go back to it. Make sure you have a good understanding of it and look at how your history and your past influenced what you think. And I think that's a very mature thing to do.
Yeah.
That we should all keep working on.
Yes, absolutely.
So
that's a great point. Well said.
Okay. Any closing thoughts? Do we hit it all?
I think we did, man. Okay. Like, I am so confident that we covered it all completely.
We don't need to go back and reanalyze it. We nailed it perfectly. We got the black belt. First try.
Gladwell's he's a scrub.
Gladwell's watching this right now, and he's rethinking Revenge of the Tipping Point right now.
Boy, wouldn't that be a twist? A plot twist.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, man. Well, thanks again so much for all of you watching and listening. We'll be back here again on Sunday next week. Hope to see you around.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening here, as always, so come do something with Ridgepoint.
Yeah, it's a good hang to be at Ridgepoint, so we invite you to come hang with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, have a good week, everybody. See ya.
See you next time.